Hello, friends, or mitro, as we've all been taught to say. I really apologize for this rushed entry and equally rushed exit because Parliament is in session. And we have, in addition to everything else, something called roster duty. So it's my duty to be there, and I'm actually, as of now, absent without leave. So forgive me for giving you a short and focused message. The panel that I was supposed to be on, and which I really regret not being a full participant of, is about the larger phenomenon in the context of political parties and media and their attitudes to these broader issues. And I thought that since it's happening today on the 9th of August, it's rather striking that you may have noticed that the Prime Minister has chosen the anniversary of the Quit India movement to launch a campaign today called 70 Saal Azadi Zara Yaad Karo Qurbani. You all miss this somehow? I guess you're not tuned into the right media these days. It's actually 74 years, of course, since the Quit India movement, not 70, but we can't quibble mathematically. The idea is that it raises a larger question, which actually I think also involves a challenge to the political parties and the media. And while there's a lot one can say on the broader topic, and I'm sure others will, I thought this having happened today, I should address this particular point right off. What's going on here? I mean, it's very clear that the BJP, led by the Prime Minister, has sought to drape itself in the mantle of nationalism. We've seen this one issue after another, the university issues, Kanhaiya, the Rohit Vemula affair, the Ambedkar Study Circle, IIT. All of this has been about the creation of a binary of national and anti-national. And of course, what's interesting is that having been relatively quiet for a few months, and none of us has been asked recently to say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, have you? No, somehow. But I mean, we've all had our rounds of that, but somehow it's been quiet. Suddenly now the anniversary of the Quit India movement has become the one in which the whole nationalism message is coming up again. And what's interesting here is that, of course, the Quit India movement is an occasion that the BJP could have actually chosen to criticize and repudiate rather than celebrate, because after all, one could argue that what happened as a result of the Quit India movement is that the entire nationalist leadership went to jail, that the Muslim League was then given a free hand to take advantage of positions that they had not been elected to in the elections of 37, that as a result they prepared their arm, they got all the patronage dispensed through the British, and when the Congress leaders were eventually released, they were hopelessly out of touch with what had been going on in the country for the preceding few years, and the Muslim League for the first time got a majority of Muslim seats in the 46 elections, and partition followed. So you could actually construct a narrative from an anti-Congress point of view saying Quit India was a disaster, but that's not what they've done. What's interesting is they've actually, instead of repudiating the Quit India movement, they've taken the line that this was a great moment and all of us should remember the Qurbani of the freedom fighters. And I think what's striking is the message that they want to drape themselves in the mantle of the freedom fighters, by implication placing themselves on the same side of the contemporary retelling of history that we are now seeing happening very systematically from those at the top. The complication, of course, is that the political cause to which the BJP is an heir, epitomized by the RSS, the Hindu Mahasabha, the Jan Sangh, etc., really didn't have anyone who was particularly active in the freedom movement. And so you saw that they had been trying to borrow their heroes. The astonishingly late posthumous Bharat Ratna for Madan Mohan Malviya, which we saw happening last year. Now the repeated attempts to resurrect Sardar Patel as an icon somehow of the BJP. We haven't heard too much about farmers being asked to donate iron from their plows to build this gigantic, grandiose statue in Gujarat of Sardar Patel. But as you know, in the first budget, a couple of 100 crores were found for the government to pay for the statue. So I suppose the farmers are now a little more dispensable. But what's interesting about this whole phenomenon is the message of nationalism that is sought to be appropriated, and which, again, this launch of this particular program by the Prime Minister today, I think specifically points to. We all know that PM has a lot to live down from his tenure in Gujarat. I think one of the fellow panelists I was expecting to see here is Tisla Satluaj. She can tell you much more about that. But what he wants to do is not just live down that taint and go beyond it, but I think adopt the association with Sardar Patel as this image of the tough, decisive man of action, rather than, of course, the bigot that those who are talking about 2002 would decry. So you can be sure that the evocation of the freedom struggle between now and August 15, 2017, when we turn 70, is going to be relentless. It starts today. You're going to see it for the next year and a week. And it's going to be built on the sacrifices of these leaders, most of whom were actually congressmen, who selectively will be appropriated by the Prime Minister and the BJP to serve their narrative. You'll hear lots of statements about how Patel forged national unity, how he stood up for the nation's Hindus during the horrors of partition and was firm on issues like Kashmir, while Prime Minister Nehru was allegedly pussyfooting. I mean, that's going to be the story you're going to hear. And as you know, the Prime Minister has openly said that India would have been better off had Patel rather than Nehru been India's first Prime Minister, overlooking the fact that Patel himself had endorsed Nehru's elevation and had written to Nehru saying, "In our combination lies our greatest strength." But of course, boosting him over Nehru serves a particular purpose vis-a-vis the opposition political party. Now, what's, I think, striking about much of this, other than the obvious appeal to a native son of Gujarat, is how different, in fact, were the behaviors of Patel and Modi confronted with a very similar set of circumstances, of course at different times. The violence that accompanied partition did not show Patel only protecting Hindus, as the BJP narrative would imply. In fact, he saw it as a serious breakdown of law and order, which is exactly what we saw in Gujarat in 2002. In both cases, there was violence and rioting against Muslims. But in Delhi in 1947, what Patel did was to immediately and effectively move to ensure the protection of Muslims. He herded 10,000 of them from the most vulnerable, exposed parts of the city, particularly the old city, to the security of the Red Fort. And because Patel was afraid that local security forces might have been infected by the communal virus, he actually moved army troops from Madras and Pune, belonging to those areas, to Delhi to ensure law and order against the violence and rioting going on. He also made it a point to send a reassuring signal to the Muslim community by attending prayers at the Nizamuddin Dargah here in Delhi himself, in order to convey the clear message that Muslims and their faith belonged unquestionably to the soil of India. He also went to Amritsar, where there were already attacks on Muslims who were fleeing to the new Islamic State of Pakistan, and he pleaded with Hindus and Sikhs there to stop victimizing Muslim refugees. In each of these cases, Patel succeeded, and there are literally tens of thousands of people who are alive today and whose descendants are alive today because of his intervention. Now, the contrast with what happened in Gujarat in 2002, of course, is painful. Whether or not one ascribes direct blame to Modi for the pogrom that year, we all know that it is pointed out that no court has convicted Mr. Modi of any wrongdoing. It's certainly true that he can claim no credit for acting in a way comparable to what Patel did in Delhi. Had he done the same sorts of things, we could have said, yes, he behaved like Patel did in Delhi. He didn't. In Gujarat, there was no direct and immediate action by Modi as the state's chief executive to protect the Muslims, nor did he express any public condemnation of the attacks, let alone undertake any symbolic action like going to a masjid or visiting even a Muslim neighborhood to convey reassurance. On the contrary, his condoning the violence served to provide protection and comfort to the rioters rather than their victims. One simply cannot imagine Patel saying to an interviewer, as we all know Modi did, that he felt as sad about the killing of Muslims as he would for a kutte ka bacha run over by a car in which he's a passenger. That was the famous metaphor. And so when you think about that, there is a particular irony to a self-proclaimed Hindu nationalist like Modi. You remember the famous hoardings in Mumbai that proclaimed him as a Hindu nationalist, now claiming to appropriate the mantle of Indian nationalism. Now, there's more and more one can go on about the past, and I won't, because obviously the panel is about the present and the future. But I mentioned this, first of all, because it's become topical with the launch of this Yaad Karo Qurbani campaign today that we've heard about from Mr. Modi and by Mr. Modi, but equally because this is going to be the narrative that will confront our political parties and our media for the next year in the build-up to the 70th anniversary of India's independence. And the question that parties and the media will have to ask is, how can we deal responsibly with this in a way that affirms our commitment to Indian nationalism and to the nation, the freedom struggle, the fact of all that we fought for and our ancestors fought for and won for us, without at the same time surrendering to the identification of the Indian nation with the government, which should never have been the case at any stage, and even more with a particular political party whose own credentials in the nationalist movement are non-existent. The media has not sufficiently, with all respect to the media present here, actually taken the trouble to draw these distinctions. And so it has allowed itself to become complicit in a rather dangerous game of seeing the Indian nation identified with and synonymous with the government in turn synonymous with the ruling party, the whole edifice epitomized in the personage of the Prime Minister, wrapped not just in the shawl that he trademark wears, but also in the Indian Tiranga. And this I think is the challenge we're going to have to respond to, because you may have noticed that during the Bharat Mata Ki Jai controversy, we did not collectively cover ourselves with glory. Indeed, my own party was complicit in a rather disgraceful resolution in the Maharashtra Assembly that actually suspended a legislator for not saying that. The media, with one or two honorable exceptions, gave very little space to this dissenting view. Instead, we did have a conflation, as I described earlier, of nationalism, party, government, and Prime Minister in a way that was truly quite alarming, because it left very little space for legitimate dissent, which in turn was caricatured and marginalized as a few anti-national slogan shouting extremist commies in the university campuses. Now, this is something which we cannot allow to see happening in the next year. And I would say, in concluding my 10 minutes of remarks, where I fear I've slightly exceeded, I would say that the challenge for us is to repeatedly hammer away and get the media to echo with us this fundamental distinction. Hammer away the distinction between the past and the present, the historical claims such as they were or were not of the ruling party, the genuine sacrifices and indeed the genuine limitations and failures of our nationalist heroes in the past, and how the nation they have created was one which enshrined a space for discussion, for dissent, for democratic debate, rather than one in which there was one overriding view of nationalism, epitomized by the government and headed by one individual, to the exclusion of all those who disagree with him, his government, or his party.